Welcome to the Caribbean Cricket Podcast, your one-stop shop for all things West Indies cricket. By the fans, for the fans.
And I listen to the Caribbean Cricket Podcast.
Indeed, you are, people. Listen to the Caribbean Cricket Podcast. Welcome back. My name is Machel Hewitt, one half of the Caribbean Cricket Podcast, and welcome to another episode of the Caribbean Cricket Podcast. A couple of days ago, we did one on the recently announced T20 squad to tour South Africa, and I said that I'd do one specifically for the ODI squad as well. So said, so done. Here is the video. Here is the discussion. And when I was making my notes prior to recording this, boy, there's a lot of discussion points. But like I say, I don't want to make this one super long. We want to try and make these ones end in roughly 20 to 30 minutes and so on and so forth. But there are a lot of talking points. As ever, in terms of the kind of admin, if you're watching on YouTube and not listening on the audios, you can find us at Carib Cricket, Twitter and Instagram. Like, share, subscribe. During this video, at the end of this video, whenever you should choose, and you can become a subscriber to the YouTube Caribbean Cricket Podcast family. Of course, should you wish to, support the Caribbean Cricket Podcast, head to www.patreon.com/Carib Cricket, and you can become a patron of the Caribbean Cricket Podcast for as little as £2, $2 to whatever your currency is per month to help us go in, help us keep doing this, so on and so forth. We've recently just created a Discord channel. And when I say recently, I mean today. At the time of recording, I created our Discord channel. So if you're somebody who uses that, I'm not, but I've been bullied into creating it by you, the fan base of the Caribbean Cricket Podcast. So look in the description below, whether on the audio platforms or whether on YouTube, and you can find the link to our Discord channel. And I guess from what people are telling me, that's a bit of a chat community for those who love West Indies cricket. So there's a Caribbean Cricket Podcast Discord channel, Caribbean Cricket Podcast server. Head over there. I'm starting to create all the different categories and so on and so forth. Let's take the chat over there after this video. But anyways, let's jump into it. The ODI squad has been named, as well as the T20 squad. If you haven't watched the T20 video, go into our archive videos and go and watch that one after this one if you're yet to sink into that or stick into that one. So Shai Hope, was named as the new ODI captain, taking over from Nicholas Pooran, who fell on his sword late last year. And yeah, it's an interesting squad. It's a super interesting squad. Before I kind of like just jump into it, I think, as always, I love to paint context, because I think you can talk about this selection, you can call this figures, you can call that. Obviously, you lot know that I love to say that I'm a better selector than our selectors, but actually that's kind of irrelevant at this point in time, because the context has to be put in place first and foremost. This is the West Indies ODI record since we played Sri Lanka at home, which was, I think, March 2021. We won that series 3-0. Since that series, this has been our record. Summer 2021, 3-match series versus Australia in the Caribbean, lost 2-1. January 2022, a 3-match series versus Ireland at home, lost 2-1. I think around February 2022, an away series in India, 3-match series, lost 3-0. Summer 2022, June, went to the Netherlands for a 3-match series, won 3-0. We then went to Pakistan, lost 3-0. Bangladesh came to us in the summer, lost 3-0. India came to us after them, lost 3-0. New Zealand then came to us, lost 2-1. So essentially, since the summer of 2021, West Indies have played a total of, let me just count. You can see me live counting now. 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, 18, 21. They have played 24 ODIs since the summer of 2021, and we have won 6. I think you can do that percentage count yourself. 6 into 24 goes 4, which means we have won a quarter of the ODIs that we have played since the summer of 2021. 6. I didn't even realize it was that bad, you know. It's only now looking at it in a cold, hard light of day that I realized we've won 6 people, and 4 of those, with respect, came against a combination of the Netherlands and Ireland. So since the summer of 2021, out of the 24 ODIs we've played, we've won 2. We've won 2 against higher ranked sides. 2, you know, 2 out of 24. And the reason why I start there is because you have to set the context. The context being that our ODI side, for me, is literally at rock bottom. When people talk about, how comes West Indies are going to be in the World Cup qualifiers, more than likely, well, there's your answer. When people talk about, when myself and Santoki say on the Caribbean Cricket Podcast, boy, it's going to be tough to get out of the World Cup qualifiers in Zimbabwe in June, we're not just saying that for the sake of saying that. Look at that context I've just painted you. We've won 2 matches out of 24, out of our last 24, against higher ranked opponents. Four out of the 6 matches we've won in our last 24 came against Ireland, 1 against Ireland, 3 against the Netherlands. Ireland and Netherlands are going to be in those World Cup qualifiers. Zimbabwe are going to be in those World Cup qualifiers. We're going to be there, obviously. Scotland will be there. Oman will be there. One of Sri Lanka or South Africa are likely to be there as well. It's going to be super sticky to get out of those World Cup qualifiers. We've got to end in the top 2 to get out of that competition. So, boy, it's not going to be easy, man. So when the ODI squad was named for this South Africa series, I looked at it, and then the next context I wanted to paint was, I was like, okay, before I can delve and dive into what's right, what's wrong, should this have been the squad to be named to go to South Africa, I said, well, what was the last squad? What was the last squad, ODI squad, that was named in our last ODI engagement? And that was a 3-match series at home versus New Zealand. And that squad was as follows. Get out your pen and paper if you need to keep kind of track of all the points here. Nicholas Pooran, captain. Shai Hope, vice captain. I'm going to name the original squad. Shamar Brooks. So I'll start again, sorry. Pooran, Hope, Brooks, Casey Carty, Shimron Hetmeyer, Jason Holder, Akil Hussain, Alzari Joseph, Brandon King, Carl Mayers, Gudakesh Moti, Kemo Paul, Jaden Seals, Kevin Sinclair. That was the original squad named to play against New Zealand. On the eve of that, not on the eve, but like maybe a week or a couple of days before that series started, Hetmeyer pulled out for personal reasons. Moti didn't recover from his hand injury, and Kemo Paul, I can't remember if it was a hamstring, but he got injured. So Shimron Hetmeyer, Gudakesh Moti, and Kemo Paul were replaced by Jermaine Blackwood, Yannick Correa, and then Odin Smith was moved from the T20 squad to the ODI squad as a reserve. That was our squad to play New Zealand. And I'm not here to say, that was a bad squad or whatever it might be. They lost the series. They lost the series 3-1. Okay, sorry, 3-1. 2-1. Okay, cool. So then my next step was to look at who played well in that series versus New Zealand. The following people played well with the bat. Yannick Correa scored a 50. He had a not out as well, but he averaged 53. So he played, his strike rate was 62, but all things being considered, he got a 50. He was all right with the bat. Nicholas Pooran got a 50, high score of 91, and he averaged 40. Carl Mayers scored 105, high score 105. He got century, strike rate 91. He averaged 37, sorry. Shai Hope had a subpar series for him. He only averaged 31, but he got a 50, high score of 51. Brooks had a subpar series, but he also scored a 50, high score of 79, but he averaged 27. Carty had a shocker. Brandon King had a shocker. Jason Holder had a shocker with the bat. Okay. Alzari Joseph actually got a 49 in that series as well. But that's kind of like the synopsis of those who did well with the bat. In terms of the ball, Jason Holder took 7 wickets at 14. Kevin Sinclair took 5 wickets at 25. Akil Hussain took 5 wickets at 28. Alzari Joseph took 5 wickets at 29. And Mayers didn't take any wickets. Correa was woeful with the ball, 3 wickets at 51, at an economy of 6. Okay, so that was kind of like what I'd say the strong performances with the bat, and there were some good performances with the ball. In fairness, Holder, Sinclair, Hussain, Joseph were all strong with the ball. Correa was not good, having been drafted into the squad. Like I say, people, all of this that I'm saying so far is just to set the context, because there is no rational analysis you can do of the squad selected to tour South Africa if you don't go back and look at our last squad that was selected and played in our last series, which was obviously that series at the back end of 2022 against New Zealand. So those were the strong performers. So then I said to myself, okay, when Blackwood, Correa, and Smith were drafted in, so Blackwood replaced effectively. It's not a hard and fast science, but this is effectively, if you go by player, this is what you have to look at it as. Blackwood replaced Hetmeyer in essence. Correa replaced Moulty, and Smith, who was a reserve, replaced Paul. So okay, cool. So then I saw the squad that was announced, the ODI squad. So the ODI squad that was announced, if I just put up on screen for South Africa, was as follows. Hope captain, obviously, he's now the new captain. Brandon King, Shamar Brooks, Nicholas Pooran, Casey Carty, Roston Chase, Akil Hussain, Yannick Correa, Carl Mayers, Rothman Powell, vice captain, Jason Holder, Romario Shepherd, Aldine Smith, Alzari Joseph, Shannon Gabriel. I said, all right, cool. On face value, when I saw that squad, I wasn't vexed. I wasn't actually vexed with it, to be fair. I didn't look at it and go, rah, where's this guy? And where's that guy? And so on and so forth. I thought there was a few talking points here and there, but it didn't heighten my senses when I initially saw that squad. And that's why, for those of you who follow the Caribbean Cricket Podcast on Twitter, I put a tweet out, I think maybe the same day or the day after the squad had been released, where I said, I'm just protecting my peace at this moment in time. And what I meant by that is I wanted a few days to properly analyze. I wanted to look at my data. I wanted to look at my statistical performance. And I didn't want to just rush into a video to do some clickbait stuff. I wanted to properly look at this in context and work out if Haynes and Butcher had picked the best squad possible, or a squad that had what I call justifiable rationales behind it. So then the first thing I did, and this is what I like to do with these videos, people. I like to take you through my thinking so that you can see why I say what I say. You don't have to agree with what I say, but I like to take you through my thinking so you understand the process in my head. So then I looked at the squad, and what I noticed was the following. These are the players who are out from the named squad. The original name squad from the squad that played against New Zealand. Kevin Sinclair is out. Jermaine Blackwood is out. Gudakesh Moulty is out. Kemo Paul is out. Jaden Seals is out. And technically, we have to say that Hetmeyer is out. I know some of those players were replacements for original dropouts, but I was just writing down who are all the people that are just out. When you look back at that 2022 squad and you look at who were replacements for the ones who originally dropped out, who's out? I'll say that again. Kevin Sinclair is out. Jermaine Blackwood is out. Gudakesh Moulty is out. Kemo Paul is out. Jaden Seals is out. And Shimron Hetmeyer is out. So then I said to myself, okay, they're the ones who are out. Even before I look at the squad which has been selected to go to South Africa, who of those people that are out deserves a drop? So I looked at Kevin Sinclair first, and I said, okay, Kevin Sinclair's out. I went back and looked at the New Zealand series and saw that Kevin Sinclair played 3 matches, took 5 wickets at 25 with his off spin. I said, huh? Sinclair's out. So, and don't get me wrong, right? I'm fairly certain that certain people are going to say to me, yeah, but Mash, you've got to look at the Super 50 figures and so on and so forth. Kevin Sinclair in Super 50 only took 6 wickets at 42. That's why he's been dropped. His economy was 4.68. I hear that. I actually hear that, Kevin Sinclair had a poor Super 50 for the Harpy Eagles, right? But then I said to myself, but he had a good series against New Zealand. So what are we saying to Kevin Sinclair? You had a good series versus New Zealand. You bowled well, but because your Super 50 wasn't strong, you're just out. That don't make a lot of sense to me. It don't make a lot of sense to me because what? It just don't make sense. You can't drop it. Well, you can because they've done it, but you can't drop a man after he's had a good series. At least look at the man a second time to see if he can maintain that. Because the obvious argument then is, so what did we call him up for? And here's the joke. When Kevin Sinclair got called up to play in that New Zealand series, a lot of us at the time, probably myself included, said, "But how did Kevin Sinclair get in the side?" Because there was, isn't this always the way with West Indies selection? There was no justifiable understanding as to how Kevin Sinclair had even got in for that New Zealand series in the first place. But much like with Raymond Reefer against Zimbabwe, he's taken his opportunity, or he took, his opportunity, and he performed versus New Zealand. So my argument now is, so how's he back out of the squad? Didn't make sense. Blackwood has been dropped. Yeah, no issue with that. He only got in as a kind of last-minute replacement anyway. Moulty, who got a hand injury, so had to be replaced and was replaced by Yannick Correa in the ODI squad. Here's my argument now. If you had originally selected Moulty and you see him as an all-format player, and I know they see him as an all-format player because in the recent press conference, Desmond Haynes said they think he's an all-format player. So if you originally selected Moulty for New Zealand and then injury meant that you had to replace him, why would you not bring him back? And more importantly, why would you not bring him back given how well he's just bowled in the Zimbabwe series? He's obviously part of the test squad. He's already in South Africa. Why would you not just bring him back? With respect to Yannick Correa didn't perform with distinction versus New Zealand with the ball. And that's the primary reason he had been called into the side. So don't tell me about, but he got a 50. He was called into the side because of what he can do, or should have been called into the side because of what he can do with the ball, because that he was a replacement for Moulty, right? So why is Moulty not back? So I had that issue. Keemo Paul, I think it's fair to say Keemo was injured. You know what? Actually, let me just bring it up because I don't want to just make this point. I want to make sure I'm saying the right thing when I make this point. Yeah, Keemo was injured, didn't feature in Super 50. So I get it. I get why you wouldn't bring Keemo Paul back in yet. So that's fine. Jaden Seals is injured right now. So that's fine. And then, of course, Shimron Hetmyer. People, if you go back and look at, actually, sorry. I love to make sure. I always want to make sure when I say stuff that I'm saying the right things, people. So if you go back to Super 50, Hetmyer scored 176 runs in Super 50 and average of 29. So that's poor. Strike rate 96. So Hetmyer didn't have a good Super 50. And the reason why I make that point is there's a strong argument, therefore, to say that Hetmyer deserves a drop in ODIs. But then you have to consider what Hetmyer's ODI record is. There aren't many players in our ODI side, obviously Shea Hope is the obvious exception, who can say they have an ODI record as good as Hetmyer. Obviously, so Hope and Puran basically are the only ones who can look at Hetmyer's record and say that they have basically have a better record than him. But Hetmyer's certainly top 3, right? Or in and of the top 3, 4. You can only assume, therefore, that Hetmyer is not in this squad because he is being punished for what happened at the World Cup. Because if it's being done purely on ability and stats, irrespective of the poor Super 50, but think about Hetmyer's actual international ODI record. If it's based off that, Hetmyer will be back in. You have to assume that Hetmyer is being punished. But here's my issue. If they're punishing him, they're punishing him. But if that's what you're doing, say so. Be transparent. Because if it's purely about ability and if it's purely about record, Hetmyer has to be there. I don't see how that's open for debate. So if it's a punishment thing, I think you have to say so, because otherwise Hetmyer not being there don't make a whole lot of sense. But either way, he's not there. So based on the players who were in the original squad or were replacements for New Zealand and who are now not featuring versus South Africa, I think Sinclair's drop, Moulty's drop, and Hetmyer's drop don't make any logical, rational sense for me personally. Fine. So then I looked at the changes and I said, right, so if those 6 are out, who are the new players who have come in for them? So I'm not saying this is how it's gone. I don't know if this is what Haynes and Roland have done in terms of their decision making. But this is how I've got to look at it. If Sinclair's out, Roston Chase is a like-for-like replacement for him. Rovman Powell must be replacing Hetmeyer. Multi is replaced by Correa. Chemo Paul is replaced by Romario Shepherd. And Jaden Seals is replaced by Odean Smith. You could swap those 2 around if you want. Okay? So I'll say that again. Chase must be the replacement for Sinclair. Powell is the replacement for Hetmeyer. Anyone saying Blackwood? Well, Blackwood was the replacement for Hetmeyer in New Zealand. So Powell is the replacement for Hetmeyer. Correa must be the replacement for Multi. Shepherd is the replacement for Paul. Smith is the replacement for Seals. So then the next step you have to ask yourself is, of those 5 replacements, those 5 replacement players, who deserves to be there? Rovman Powell 100% deserves to be there, because we must remember, people, in the Super 50 last year, Rovman Powell was the top run scorer. Remember, the Jamaica Scorpions won the competition. Powell scored 346 runs, 100, 150, average 69, strike rate of 118 across the tournament. So Powell 100% deserves to be there. Romario Shepherd was the 10th highest wicket taker in Super 50. He wasn't in the New Zealand squad. He's found his way back in. Shepherd took 10 wickets in Super 50 at 26. Lots of you listening to this will say, Mash, Shepherd shouldn't be there. But when I crunched the numbers, Shepherd was the 4th best seamer in Super 50. The 3 who are above him, Gabriel's in the squad. Odean Smith is in the squad. Nicholson Gordon is injured, I think. And then it's Romario Shepherd. So I was like, in my head, I was like, well, that kind of makes sense, you know. Even if people are trying to fight down and say Shepherd shouldn't be there, if we're going off domestic performance, makes sense that Shepherd is back in the side. I've just realized, by the way, people, that I've missed out Gabriel. So Gabriel is also a new addition to the squad as well. So actually, that explains the 6 players out, and then Gabriel is a 6th player in. So there is another replacement there. Okay. So Shepherd, in fairness, I think probably deserves the spot. So Powell definitely deserves his spot. Shepherd deserves his spot. Odean Smith probably deserves his spot as well. He was already called up as a reserve for the ODI squad when all the players had to pull out through injury or personal reasons, whatever. And then he was the 2nd highest wicket taker, 15 wickets at 19 in Super 50. So Odean deserves his spot. So I've got no issues with that as well. So if you're keeping track, Powell deserves his spot. Shepherd deserves his spot. Odean Smith deserves his spot. Shannon Gabriel was a top wicket taker. Yes, people are going to say Gabriel's 34, but we've been wanting for a while somebody else who can be an enforcer alongside Alzari Joseph. I had said, for those of you who are long-time watchers and viewers of the Caribbean Cricket Podcast, you may remember that I did several videos at the back end of 2022 saying that I thought Shannon Gabriel would get back into the ODI squad. But when I said that, that was because I didn't think he'd ever get back in the test squad, because I thought that West Indies what am I trying to say here? I thought that West Indies would try and preserve Shannon's career. And in order to do that, you draft him into ODIs. You don't have to worry as much about him breaking down with regards to all the fitness concerns he's been having over the last few years. So I never saw him getting back into the test squad so soon, but I did see him get him into the ODI squad because of his performances in Super 50. I think that's warranted. We've got to try something different with the ball. So I can understand that. So Powell makes sense. Shepherd makes sense. Smith makes sense. Gabriel makes sense. So then I said to myself, you lot can see where I'm going here. I said, okay, how did Roston Chase get in? This, and do you know what the joke is, people? I often find myself returning to this argument. I often say to myself, how does Roston Chase get in? So Roston Chase wasn't in the New Zealand squad. He's back in the ODI squad. before I bring up, because I'm going to give you the pro and the con argument for Roston Chase replacing Kevin Sinclair. Firstly, I'm just saying that Chase shouldn't be there. I know why he's there, and I'm going to argue the point in a minute. But I'm just going to say Chase shouldn't be there, not because I'm trying to fight him down, but because Sinclair doesn't deserve his drop. That's my argument. I don't think Sinclair deserves his drop. Sinclair's been bowling, by the way, in the 4-day championship for the Harpy Eagles. So it's not like he's not been playing cricket. I think Sinclair should have been given another look. He hasn't been. Chase has. So first, I went looking for Chase's numbers in the last few years playing playing ODI cricket for the West Indies. With the bat in 2022 for the West Indies in ODI cricket, Roston Chase had 3 innings. He's averaged 11 with a high score of 19. That's with the bat. The last time he played ODI cricket before then was in 2020. He batted 4 innings. He averaged 20, high score of 41. So if we're going off his international record with the bat, he has no reason to be there, right? So then I said, it must be because of what he's been doing with the ball. So then I looked at his international record with the ball in ODI cricket. In 2022, Roston bowled 20 overs, 4 wickets, at an average of 23. I said, okay, fair. I mean, if it's about off spinner for off spinner, I can see what they're going with here. In 2020, he bowled 42 overs, 4 wickets at 52. That's atrocious. But in 2022, 20 overs, 4 wickets at 23. People, I think Sinclair should have been kept on because it's the right thing to do. But I know what they're doing with Roston Chase. I know what they're doing. It's the same thing they did in Australia, and that transports over to ODIs as well. Here's what they're effectively saying. They believe that Roston Chase is a better batter than Kevin Sinclair, and he is, to be fair. And what they're basically gambling here. I think they believe that Chase's off spin is just as useful as Kevin Sinclair's, and they know that Chase bats better than Kevin Sinclair. So they're going to say that Chase adds more batting depth and his bowling is just as good as Sinclair's. I'll leave that for all of you lot in the comments or at us at Carib Cricket on Twitter and Facebook, Twitter and Instagram, to let me know if you agree with that argument or if you think that's what they're doing, because it's not my argument. I'm just telling you what I think, right? And then I looked at Super 50. Roston Chase only played 3 matches in Super 50. I think it was because of international duty. So Roston Chase in Super 50 with the bat, he only played 3 matches, 143 runs, 2 50s, strike rate of 97. I hear that still. I hear that. 143 runs in 3 matches, 2 50s at a strike rate of 97. I have to respect that. With the ball, 7 wickets at 16. Economy 3.63. So as much as I'm saying, I think it's harsh on Kevin Sinclair, and I think they should have given Kevin Sinclair another go, I know what's going on here. They've looked at what Roston did in the ODIs with the ball last year, into ODI internationals with the ball, sorry. They've looked at Roston's admittedly small sample size in Super 50. They've looked at Roston's resurgence as of late in both in Australia with the bat and in Zimbabwe with bat and ball. And they've said, you know what? Roston offers more than Kevin Sinclair can with the bat, and with the ball, he's likely to do the same. I don't know if I fully agree, but that's the justification. So based on that justification, Chase gets in. Chase gets in. If that's the rationale, Chase probably gets in. Which leaves one last player who is in the squad, who was only a replacement for New Zealand because Multi got injured, and I can't justify it. I personally do not believe that Yannick Correa should be in this squad. In Super 50, back end of 2022, Gudakesh Multi took 14 wickets at 20. Yannick Correa took 12 wickets at 27. When Yannick Correa played in that New Zealand series, after he came in as an injury replacement for Gudakesh Multi, Correa bowled 25 overs across the 3-match series, took 3 wickets, at 51 apiece. I just don't know, people. Where's the rationale? Where's the rationale, man? If you had originally selected Multi for New Zealand and you only replaced him with Correa because Multi got injured, and then Multi out bowls him in Super 50, and then Multi goes to Zimbabwe and does a madness, why would you take Correa in the ODI squad when Multi's already in South Africa? It don't make no sense. It don't make no sense. I can't find any sense, people. So of all the changes, Correa is the only one where I can't find any sense. I can't find no justification. I can't find no sense. In fact, the only justification I can find is if they're saying to themselves, well, boy, our ODI batting is so brittle, we have to carry Correa. Like, same thing with the Chase argument. It only makes sense if you're looking at it and going, boy, our ODI batting isn't good enough. We can't trust it. So the more what do you even call Correa? Because I think he's a batter more than he's a bowler. The more batters you take who you think can bowl a bit, the deeper your batting lineup goes. I don't know if that's what they're doing, people, but that's the only rationale I can find. But me personally, I don't think Correa should be there. I think Gudakesh Multi should be there. Other than that, the only other real talking points that I've got to talk about, with regards to this squad is Carty and King. Brandon King, I really like Brandon King. I think he's a classy batter. I think he should probably be already in and around the test squad. But King's lucky to still be there. I think they have gambled on the fact that Brandon King was the third top run scorer in Super 50. Couple of 50s, and bring up his stats again. A couple of 50s, 337 runs, an average of 42, 250, strike rate 82. I think with Brandon King, they're basically looking at him and they're saying, surely he's got to come good in ODI cricket. He's come good in T20 cricket. I think he's now established as part of the West Indies T20 side. They've been giving him, sorry, people, I'm trying to bring up his stats from last year just to articulate this point. They've been giving him a go in ODIs and it just hasn't come off. I watched him in the Netherlands last year. He had one good innings that I saw. I think it was a high score of 91. Could be wrong, right? But last year with the bat, he batted 16 innings last year in ODI cricket, scored 330 runs, an average of 24. Brandon is lucky to still be in this side. I think, like I say, I think what has happened with Brandon is they've looked at his Super 50 form and said, let's give him one more go. Carty, they've kept in because he's young. And I think my personal view is you've got to just stick with Carty and give him time to adjust to international cricket. There's nothing to be gained by dropping Carty now. Now he's in, give him a long run and help him develop and give him game time. I don't know if he's going to get the game time versus South Africa. I'd like to think he's at least going to get one game somewhere. He probably won't. He might not. But I think it's right to keep investing in Carty and give him the time to come good. It's King who is probably most at risk in this side if he doesn't come good. But I understand why they've continued to back him, given what he did in Super 50. So I do understand there's that argument. If they were going to drop one of King or Carty, that of the player who they should have picked is Alec Athanaze. I still maintain that if you have taken Alec Athanaze to South Africa for the Test series, and Bonner's been dropped, and there's a whole big argument about all of that. But if you take Alec Athanaze, why would you have not kept him on for the ODI series? Particularly that when you look back at Super 50, he got those 2 back-to-back centuries in the first 2 games of Super 50. Yes, he didn't score again after that, but that really kind of woke people up in the Caribbean to the potential he has. He was the 6th top run scorer in Super 50. So I don't understand why they haven't just kept him on for the ODI portion of the South Africa tour. I think that would have been the right thing to do. They haven't done it. I don't think it makes a lot of sense, but I suspect that the justification is they want to carry on investing in Carty and they're not ready yet to drop Brandon King. I think this is Brandon King's last go. 2 more points and I'm done, people. In terms of Romario Shepherd and Aldine Smith, I think both deserve to be there. I think both deserve to get their opportunity again. But what I want to see in South Africa, and this has always been my issue with Romario Shepherd and Odean Smith in ODI cricket, I want to see head coach Andre Coley. I know that obviously Jimmy is out there as batting coach as well, but I want to see them give Romario and Odean role clarity. My issue with these two has always been, what's their role? Are they there to bowl 10 overs, yes or no? Are they there to split the 10, one block of 10 overs between them? Is that the right thing to do? Do they believe that Romario Shepherd and Odean Smith are good enough to bowl 10 overs in international cricket? If they believe that, cool. That's why they're there. If they don't believe that Smith and Shepherd can bowl 10 overs each, if they both get in the side, then why are they there? Because you can't tell me that they're there as batting all-rounders. That they can't be there for that. These picks mean that they are there for me as bowling all-rounders who can do an explosive madness at the back end should West Indies be trying to chase something. They've got to have been picked for that reason. So the first question I want answered, and the real thing that I want to see in South Africa, is role clarity and role definition for Shepherd and Smith. What are you primarily there to do? And when are they planning to use them? Because I've always worried that they're the same player. I'm not convinced yet that we've got two individually good players in Shepherd and Smith. I think between them, we've got 1.5 good players, but we don't have two individually good players in their own right, which often means that when we both play them, I often feel like we're carrying one of them at some point in the match. So it's just something to consider. I think they both deserve to be there, but it's all about role clarity for me going forward. And then just finally to end this video, I know it's been quite long, people, but I did want to do a kind of proper analysis. Just finally to end this video, it's important to just stress to everyone. It's important to stress to everyone that this is our last ODI engagement before the World Cup qualifiers begin in Zimbabwe in June. So my worry now is this. This squad, to me, is pretty much it, isn't it? And here's the joke. Here's the big joke, for example. We know we're going back to Zimbabwe. Okay, it's not officially confirmed, but we have to assume we're going back to Zimbabwe for the World Cup qualifiers in June, right? We have no more ODIs to play. I want to know two things. One, are there any camps planned? Only Cricket West Indies can answer that. Are there any camps planned for our white ball sides prior to that 50 over World Cup qualifiers? And two, did anybody give any long-term thinking behind the picking of this squad prior to going to those World Cup qualifiers? And here's just one example of what I mean. The World Cup qualifiers take place in Zimbabwe. Here's just one example of what I'm talking about. Gudakesh Motie just took 19 wickets at like 14 apiece in the Test series against Zimbabwe. Gudakesh Motie is not in our ODI squad versus South Africa. Yet when we go to Zimbabwe in the ODI World Cup qualifiers, check this out, people. I bet you Gudakesh Motie is back in the World Cup, but is back in our ODI squad by the time we go back to those World Cup qualifiers. Does anyone think about these things? Does anyone plan ahead of time and look to see where we're going to be and who we might need, and then think about what that means in terms of planning going forward? These are our only 3 ODIs before those World Cup qualifiers in June. Did anyone connect the two dots and think, who are we going to need? I know it's different tracks in South Africa, but did anyone think about, who might we need when we go back to Zimbabwe? Are we just going to give them no cricket then in the 50 over format before that? It's just food for thought. Listen, people, that's been a longish episode, but I think there was far more kind of questions and talking points with regards to the ODI squad than there were with the T20 squad. I hope you enjoyed that. Like I say, before you go, like, share, and subscribe if you're watching this on YouTube to the Caribbean Cricket Podcast. If you're listening on the audios, then you know what to do. Press follow, Spotify, Apple, whatever it might be. That's been another edition of the Caribbean Cricket Podcast. Thank you, and good night.
We rule the cricket world. Now the rule seems coming.
Welcome to the Caribbean Cricket Podcast, your one-stop shop for all things West Indies cricket. By the fans, for the fans.